Hello everyone. In previous slides, part 1 and part 2, we have discussed about the Indian economy on the eve of independence, especially about agricultural sector, industrial sector and foreign trade. In part 3, we are going to discuss about the remaining sections of Indian economy on the eve of independence. Demographic condition, occupational structure and infrastructure. So let's start with the demographic condition. Demography word means population, human beings. British East India Company started census. Census means counting of people, and they started in the year 1881. Then after, government was conducting census after every 10 years. And 1921, this year had a great history in census. This year was known as Year of the Great Divide. This year was called demographic transition year because after 1921 there was continuously rise in Indian population. Here are some points we will discuss one by one. What was the condition of our population? What was the demographic condition of our nation during British period? We can understand it better through these points. Number 1, high birth and death rate. Birth rate, number of people live per 1,000 person per year. And what was the birth rate at that time? 48. And the death rate was 40 out of 1,000 per year. This figure is indicating poor health and backwardness of Indian country. So high birth and high death rate was there in colonial period. Number 2, IMR, infant mortality rate. What is the meaning of infant mortality rate? Number of children die before the attempting the age of 1. In current scenario, at present, it is 40 per 1,000. It is indicating very good health care services in India. But in contemporary India, it was 218, which was indicating very poor, very bad health. It means bad healthcare services were there in India during British time. Number 3, literacy rate. What was the literacy rate at that time? Current literacy rate of our nation is 74%. That is very good, and it is showing very literate people are there in our country. 74 out of 100 people are literate. But in that time, in contemporary India, it was only 16%, which was very, very poor and indicating backwardness of the society. Number 4, life expectancy rate. In current time, it is 68, which is showing good health care facilities. But in colonial period, it was 40 years. what it is showing? It's showing that poor health services were there, so people were unable to survive. Number 5, poor state of health facilities. So overall, there were very poor, weak healthcare services during the colonial period, because company did not want to invest in healthcare services for the improvement of healthcare services. They did not invest in this sector. Number 6, widespread poverty. In totality, we Indian people were very poor during the colonial period. So what were the reason behind this? Because education was not there, literacy rate was very low, as you all know, and we discussed in point number 3. Due to lack of policies, British government formulated very poor, very exploiting policies for Indians, and per capita income of Indian was very low at the time. So this is all about demographic condition on the eve of Indian independence. Next, 5th section of Indian economy, occupational structure. You all know, mainly there are 3 kind of activities. Economic activity, economy is divided into 3 sectors: primary sector, secondary sector, and tertiary sector. The same different kind of activities were there, and all the activities were categorized in 3 sectors: primary, secondary, and tertiary. So here we will discuss about the occupational structure of Indian people. Here is a point. Number 1, predominance of agricultural sector over other sectors. So most prominent sector was agriculture sector. Maximum Indian population directly and indirectly depend on agriculture sector, agriculture related activities. In percentage, in primary sector there were 72.7% people, whereas in secondary 10%, and in tertiary sector 17.2%. So there was a great involvement of human being in primary sector. They engaged with primary activities. You all know what are the primary activities: farming, fishing, mining, etc. So point is clear: predominance of agricultural sector over other sector. This was the condition of our occupational structure. Number 2, regional variation. Activities or occupational structure differ from state to state, differ from place to place. For example, in Punjab, Haryana, and Rajasthan, maximum people engaged in agriculture. But if we talk about Madras and Bombay presidency, most of the people engaged in secondary and tertiary sector. Secondary sector is also called manufacturing sector, and tertiary sector is also called service sector. So this is all about occupational structure. Now the 6th section, this is last section, infrastructure. Were there any kind of infrastructure during the colonial period? British East India Company developed infrastructure. There was a reason behind it. They developed all these things to increase their own profit, not for Indian people. So what kind of infrastructural changes company made? Waterways, seaports, railways, post, telegraphs, etc. All these developed because of their own interest. They completely drained Indian wealth to introduce, to develop these infrastructures, these all infrastructures. So this section we will discuss one by one. There are some points. Number one, roadways, road. So why did they introduce road? Because they transported raw materials very fast, very easy from one place to another place. They wanted to mobilize British army easily, so that's why they developed roads. Number two, railways. First Indian train, first rail was started in the year 1853, and railway was developed to promote commercialization of agriculture and industries. Now British company focused, they stressed for the commercialization of agriculture. Number three, water transport. This means of transport also developed by the company through canals and sea route for transferring freight. Number four, communication. They developed post and telegraph. Now here is a question, why did they develop postal services, telegraph services? For good administration, to develop efficiency in administration. Some facts are there. First stamp was introduced in the year 1852, and telegraph services were introduced in the year 1853. In the same year, first railway train was started in India. This was all about different section of economy on the eve of independence. Now, the last topic of our first chapter, positive impacts of colonial rule. All these points we have discussed in various sections that we already discussed in part 1, part 2, and this part 3. So what kind of positive impacts were there? First point, commercialization of agriculture. Number 2, development of infrastructure. So what kind of changes were there in infrastructure? What kind of commercialization was there in agricultural field? What kind of effective administration, monetary system of exchange? Our monetary system had been completely changed. It had been shifted from CC economy. CC, it means commodity to commodity exchange. So British company introduced money instead of this system, this old system. Check-in, famines, communication and transport. So all these we have already discussed in various sections. So these were the positive impacts of colonial rule. And now the first chapter is over. Thank you very much.